here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Today we're spending the hour with Shane Bauer, Sarah Short, and Josh Fatal, the authors of their new book, A Sliver of Light, 3 Americans Imprisoned in Iran. I asked them about the focus of their work since their release. I began by asking Shane.
Once I left prison, it didn't feel over, you know. I thought about the people I was in prison with. I thought about prisoners, you know, around the world, and it made sense to me to start looking into prisons in this country. We have the largest prison population in the world. We have 80,000 people in solitary confinement. We have some that have been in for decades, you know, and it's this part of our society that I think goes unseen. And as a former prisoner, I had a very different perspective on it, and it was something that was always at the top of my mind.
Last year, more than 12,000 prisoners in California went on a hunger strike in a push to end long-term solitary confinement, which they call a form of indefinite state-sanctioned torture. Shane, you went to Pelican Bay, and you took a tour of the facility for Mother Jones magazine. This is a clip from a video that accompanied Shane's report when officials gave him a tour of one of the 11 by 7-foot solitary confinement cells in the security housing unit, or SHU.
Why don't they have windows here?
This way it was designed.
But why?
I don't know. I can't explain that.
The inmate would be in a cell, and then a food tray would be passed through the cell.
If they ever leave the pod, prisoners have to strip naked, pass their hands through a food slot to be handcuffed, then wait for the door to open.
Inmates come out to, you know, get some exercise. There's more room to run out here.
Prisoners only get an hour in this concrete dog run every day.
How did it feel to return to solitary confinement, if only to tour through it now in the U.S.?
You know, when I walked into that cell, I was shocked. I was shocked that there was no window in that cell. You know, the smallest things when you're in solitary confinement are the world, you know, and not having an access, no direct sunlight for years on end was just mind-blowing to me. And you have to remember that some of the people that are in these cells, you know, they didn't necessarily commit acts of violence. Some of them are there because of they had a picture with somebody who was a gang associate, or somebody who had drawings, or even one person I knew that had spent years in the SHU had a journal where he had written kind of bits of African American history, the number of hangings of African Americans in a given time period. And this was considered gang material, writings by Mumia Abu-Jamal. So, you know, people were put in these conditions that, to me, were even more severe in a way than conditions that I had been through in Iran. And it was shocking to me. You know, it was really shocking to me to step into that.
Sarah, you're now working with Solitary Watch. Explain what it is.
Solitary Watch is an organization that is bringing stories of people in prolonged solitary confinement in our country out for the public to look at.
I want to play a clip from Opening the Box, which is this play that you're writing based on the real story of people talking about their experiences.
The real world is out of place in the hole, but the hole is nonetheless really here. The first time I did 18 months in the hole, I saw only 3 or 4 colors. I felt only concrete and steel.
In the hole, painful memories begin to throw out shoots and sprout like brittle weeds until finally the weeds choke to death everything else in the garden. You are left with a cold wasteland of scrubby weeds, flinty stone, and dusty soil.
So that's a clip about the play that you're doing, Opening the Box.
Yeah. With Solitary Watch, I've already gathered over 75 oral testimonies and written testimonies through in-depth letter correspondences with prisoners in solitary all over the country. And really, for me, this has been a very important part of making sense of my own experience. When I first got out of prison, I felt extremely alone. One of the worst things about post-traumatic stress is there was no one around me that understood what I'd gone through. And you know, prison is, for some people in certain communities in our country, it's a shocking, rare event, particularly in affluent communities or mostly white communities. It's not it's considered a common thing. But in our country as a whole, prison is anything but uncommon. 1 in every 100 people in our country will go to prison at some point in their lives. Our prison population is the size of Boston, D.C., and San Francisco combined. So for me, hearing stories from other people that had experienced the same kind of torture that I've experienced really helped me.
Shane Bauer, how does Guantanamo fit into this picture?
Well, you know, we were held, Josh and I were held for 2 years without trial, you know, and there were times in prison that, you know, when I was in solitary confinement, I asked my guards, you know, why am I in solitary? Why won't you let me out? And I remember one guard saying, well, what about Guantanamo? How long are they held in Guantanamo? I said, when can we go to trial? Well, how long have people been held in Guantanamo without trial? And, you know, and there were other times when we heard prisoners getting beaten, and Josh and I pounded on the door, and the guards would come running, and we learned that the way to get them was to say, what is this, Guantanamo? And they were so insulted by that, you know, in their mind, being compared to this prison, which to them was the worst prison possible, was an insult, and they would actually stop beating people. And, you know, I think that really it's simple. I mean, I, you know, was held for 2 years without trial, and there was no evidence against me. And I think very few people in our society would think that's justified. We believe in trial by jury in this country, and we should, you know, apply that everywhere. This should be applied all over the world, including in Guantanamo Bay, where people have been held for years, some over 10 years, without trial.
Josh Fatal, could you read your selection from A Sliver of Light?
Yes. This is while I was in solitary confinement. A tall, well-built guard charges down the hallway. He clashes a few feet from my door with a prisoner. I hear a single smack. I rush to the door to listen as I cringe at the cruelty of this place. The prisoner releases a desperate yell. Then the drizzle turns to thunder. I hear each blow as they rain down on him just 8 feet from where I stand. He screams as if impaled by stakes. The whole prison must be able to hear him. A nearby inmate bangs on his door in solidarity. Almost immediately, I chime in along with everyone else, all of us banging on our doors to protest the beating. The uprising is contagious, and the sense of rebellion has my blood rushing. This is our moment of power. Our moment of instantaneous and blind solidarity. The guards can't stop us. They can't shut us up, though they run frantically up and down the hallways trying. They seem scared and uncertain, emotions usually felt only by us prisoners. We continue banging and yelling after the beating stops. The belligerent guard bursts into my cell. Fire rages in his eyes. His fists clench by his side. He's the one who's done the beating, and he's wound up like a bulldog on a leash. I take a few steps away from the door. He charges forward, fuming. Facing the beast eye to eye, I feel calmer, more alive than I have for weeks. I don't want to fight, I yell at him, even though I know he doesn't understand English. He stares at me, deciding my fate. He backpedals out of my cell as though yanked by a leash. By late afternoon, the sounds are long gone. The fight unleashes the violence that always simmers just below the surface in prison. On my way to Havahuri, the courtyard, I see the bulldog guard with his back against the wall, arms crossed and his head is bowed. He is now a contrite puppy. He raises his head slowly and takes hold of my arm. He enunciates slowly as if he's rehearsed the English apology. Excuse me.
As you go out on the road now, the three of you with your book, you relive all of this again. How do you cope with it?
You know, it doesn't fully leave me. I mean, even last recently with the nuclear negotiations going on, I was up all night thinking about it. It's important to me that that these countries can come together and sort of end this mutual hostility that ended up stealing 2 years of my life.
I know you all have to leave to move on with this book tour as you travel the country, talking about both your own experiences and solitary confinement in general. But I wanted to end where you begin, and that's with the title of the book, A Sliver of Light. Why did you choose that title?
I think there's different reasons. One is the literal interpretation is, when we're in our cells, especially before we have any way of noting time, when we're in solitary confinement, the way that we measured the passing of the day was the light that was cast through our window. And since we've named the book this, whenever I mention it to somebody who's been in prison, they know immediately what it means. There were cells that Josh and I were in where there were actually marks on the wall with numbers written by them that would mark the time of the day. But for me, sometimes it was the time. By this corner, this might be where the interrogator comes. By this corner, it's dinner time, and that's what what carried us through.
The importance of our book, for me personally, is it's a story of freedom. I mean, it's a story of the horror of losing your freedom and the miracle of getting it back. But it's not just about our story. It's also about all the people that we had to leave behind, the people that helped us in prison, and the people in our own country that don't have that sliver of light, that don't have the hope of getting out.
Sarah Shore, Shane Bauer, and Josh Fatal. They tell their story in their new book released today, A Sliver of Light, 3 Americans Imprisoned in Iran. You can read an excerpt of the book on our website, democracynow.org. We'll also link to all of our coverage of the hikers over the years at democracynow.org. Sarah, Shane, and Josh are speaking tonight at Barnes & Noble on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. They then head off to Philadelphia, to Cambridge, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., to Los Angeles, Berkeley, and Seattle. I'm speaking tonight at the Socially Relevant Film Festival here in New York at the Quad Cinema on 13th Street at 7:15. Then on March 29th, I'll be in St. Louis at the Gateway Journalism Review's First Amendment celebration. Democracy Now! is produced by Mike Burke, Renee Felser, and Mate Nerman, Shakes Martinez, Sam Alcoff, Hani Masood, Ravi Karen, Dina Guzdar, Amy Littlefield. Special thanks to Julie Crosby, Beckett Staley. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.